It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Hungary's far-right party, Fidesz, managed to win a two-thirds majority in parliament on Sunday. This means that Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is re-elected for another four-year term. Observers said that the vote was generally free from fraud, but that the governing party Fidesz made extensive use of its power and resources to sway voters in its favor. Also, electoral rules favored Fidesz tremendously, allowing it to win a two-thirds majority with only 49% of the vote. Here's what the head of the OSCE, that is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe's its electoral observer mission, had to say, and this is the head of the mission, Douglas Wake.
The 8 April parliamentary elections were characterized by a pervasive overlap between state and ruling party resources, undermining contestants' ability to compete on an equal basis. Voters had a wide range of political options, but intimidating and xenophobic rhetoric, media bias, and opaque campaign financing constricted the space for genuine political debate.
It is now expected that Orbán, who has been moving steadily towards the right over the past few years, will begin a crackdown on liberal NGOs and, of course, on immigrants, which most of his campaign was based on. Here's what Orbán had to say shortly after the results were announced.
Regarding the results of the election, I can tell you, my dear friends, that it was a big battle and that we have gained a decisive victory. We now have the opportunity to defend our country. We have created that opportunity for ourselves.
Joining me now to analyze election results from Budapest is Benjamin Novak. Benjamin is senior correspondent for the Budapest Beacon. Benjamin, let's start off with a technical point. How is it possible that with only 49% of the vote, Orbán managed to secure two-thirds of the seats?
Well, you changed the election rules, the election laws, and the rules that Fidesz changed. What they did was they removed the two-round election in Hungary, which meant that if in an individual electoral district, if you had multiple candidates running, if none of the candidates actually achieved 50%, the top two candidates would have a runoff. So it was a two-round system. Now, the perks of this kind of a system, of course, is that opposition parties or the two leading parties will actually have to form some kind of compromise with smaller parties to get their candidates to win in the runoff. And so what Fidesz did is they wiped this law away, this rule away. With the election law during the previous Orbán government. So it's now a first past the post race in individual electoral districts. Now what this means is that technically you can have candidates run for parliament and win, receiving just maybe in the high 20s or low 30s percent, in the high 20s or low 30s percent. So that's one of the ways. The other way is a tactic that many people around the world in democracies are familiar with, is gerrymandering. And so this was another thing that happened under Fidesz, under the second Orbán government between 2010 and 2014. They gerrymandered the entire country. And aside from this, the media also plays an enormous role. It's a very difficult and complex election system in Hungary that offers compensation to the winning party. But I don't think we have enough time for me to get into the nuts and bolts of that. But I think what's very important for the viewers here to realize is that we're talking about a country, we're talking about democracy, and I'm saying this in quotation marks here, where the election law was written unilaterally by one party. And it should really come as no surprise to people that regardless of what kind of numbers are turning up at the polls, we're seeing that Fidesz continuously gets two-thirds supermajority. Why is this important? Because a two-thirds supermajority is what you call a constitutional supermajority. You can change the Constitution at a whim, and so that is really the key to this kind of success at the polls.
All right. Now, in that clip that we played from the observers who declared that that's the OSCE Electoral Observer Mission, who mentioned that the advantages that Fidesz had by using state resources shaped the outcome of the election. Give us a sense of what specifically they did to do that.
Well, so that was a very good point and very good observation that the election observers made. So what's very important to realize about Hungary, and we're kind of stepping out of the political game, and we're just kind of, let's look at the culture and the media landscape here. Is Hungary is a linguistically isolated country. The Hungarian language is unlike any other language, really. There's perhaps only like Finnish, very difficult to understand. People in Hungary, especially in the countryside, don't speak other languages. So what they rely on primarily is Hungarian news. Now, this is where we get to the media section of our discussion. So the media environment in Hungary has become consolidated under Fidesz. Oligarchs close to the prime minister have acquired every newspaper in the countryside, every single newspaper in the countryside. People in the countryside are more likely to watch public media, which is no longer public media. It's actually referred to as state media, which serves as a propaganda channel for the government. And aside from that, you have public radio, which in effect is the exact same thing. And so the government, one of the ways that it keeps these newspapers and these pro-government television channels that aren't state-owned but are owned by oligarchs alive, is they lavish them in copious amounts of state advertising money. And this money makes its way to these channels through these propaganda ad spots. And so to give you an example here, and I'm trying to like pack this in so that people can understand the way this election was sold in Hungary by the ruling party was not an election against the opposition. The opposition, for all intents and purposes, is very weak, divided, and pretty much incapable of running a decent campaign as things stand at this moment. The campaign that the ruling party was running was against George Soros. So it built up this giant campaign against George Soros, saying that he was in cahoots with Brussels to import Muslim terrorists into Hungary, to rob Hungary of its Christian heritage and its status as a nation state. And they took this propaganda message, and this is what they blanketed the country with, not just in legacy media, that is newspapers, radio, and television, but also on billboards and posters that you would see all around the cities and all around the villages. So you have this message coming from the government for years, and then the ruling party's main campaign objective here is to defeat the people or defeat the person that the government has been portraying as being the great enemy of the Hungarian nation for all these years now. So when the election monitors are talking about this, the blurring of the lines between state and party resources, this is the kind of thing they're referring to.